Welcome to another AVID chat. David Harple and Jack Arnold. Jack, happy Tuesday as always.
Good to see you, Dave.
So if you've been part of our 5 degrees of freedom, this is our fifth and final degree that we're going to share with you. It's been a great journey. Hopefully you've got some value out of these things. To quickly recap, we started with the importance of just having a vision. Where are you trying to head? What are you trying to do? Because that's really going to help give you a focus as you move along. Second degree was you incorporated viewing your personal finances like a business was. It's super important to know your bottom line so that you know where to put it so that it aligns with your values. We then talked in degree 3 about protection, and those were things from cash reserves to insurances to estate docs, all sorts of things. Then last week in step 4, we talked about compounding and just how these little things over time will continue to build up. And it really isn't until longer into the plan, if you will, that you really start to see growth. So that brings us to number 5. And I would say this is definitely not the last step. It's, I think, a perpetual thing. And it really is the review and maintenance. So let's just start with why, Jack, you think reviewing all these things is so crucial to success or making sure that you get things accomplished and following that true vision.
Well, I would think that one is to keep, it's almost like you don't clean your house once, you got to keep up with it. Like you got to keep at it. Otherwise it just turns into a whole mess again. So you have to keep up with it. I would say a lot of these things, I wouldn't think of these things as, we're calling them degrees, we've done them in some kind of order, but they are somewhat of a circle in some sense, a flat circle, if you want to say like that. So they're all intertwined, they're constantly changing, and they're going to require some kind of maintenance, because if you're not paying attention to something, it will kind of get, maybe one way or the other way that you don't necessarily want it to go. And you could really say that about anything that we've talked about. Things change, and there's going to need to be some maintenance and some review and making sure you're still, the path that you set yourself on is actually the one that you now enjoy because you're, a year older or 5 years older and things change. So yeah, just reviewing and maintaining things. It sounds like almost like a throwaway, like, yeah, review and maintain, but it's incredibly important. You've put all this time and effort in the beginning. Let's say if you've gone through this, you got to keep it up. You don't want to do all that heavy lifting all over again. It's much easier to do it, maintain it.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point too about just change in general, whether that's your environment, your financials, your home life. So many different things can impact even the vision and purpose. You mentioned age. As we get older, I think I know my personal values and viewpoint on things has grown and developed. And if I were to rely on, I did all this 2 years ago, I don't need to look at it. I think that would end up really blowing up all the effort. Just think of how much time it takes to do steps 1 through 4, degrees 1 through 4. So to just say, it's fine, I'll just keep doing it, is almost like you're cheating yourself.
Right. Yeah, like don't make it a New Year's resolution. Like do it for a month and then, I've done all this work. The point is to kind of keep up with it. And I do think that, the effort in the beginning, I would say, we've talked about this in the first 2 things that we talked about is the having some kind of vision and value, which probably the reason we did it, number 1, is you got to know where you're going. It's probably the more difficult thing because it's hard to look on to the outside world to figure out what that is because everybody's different. And then the second step being keeping track of your cash flow, which is like an ongoing thing. Those are probably the things that take the most effort to do and to gain as skills, I suppose. And if you let those things fall off, you almost have to start over and you have to go from the very beginning. And it's a lot of effort to put into it when you could just, I could give you a million examples. Brush your teeth, like all these things are like little bits of maintenance on a consistent schedule. It just makes it much easier. It's much easier just to keep those things maintained and review them on a regular basis than to just always be playing from behind and, trying to fix things because you just neglected it for a while. So review and maintenance, like I said, it sounds like just review it. It sounds like almost a throwaway, but it's really, it's the key to the longevity of all this effort that you've put into it.
Right. And you know what, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking it sounds so like tactical, like, I got to sit down and look at the budget. But a better way to look at it would be, it's more of a being. It's a state of being, right? It's not like I'm going to go for a run today. It's I'm a runner. This is what I do. This is part of my life.
Exactly.
I'm a runner. I review and I have a great handle on my finances because I have a purpose and a vision. And I think that's a different way of thinking of it.
Correct. I'm good with money. That's the kind of person that I am. Like that's, if you're telling yourself that, then you would do the things that a good with money type of person would do. And if you're the type of person that I'm the kind of person that is just determined to make the most of all the effort and the life, the one shot I get at doing this thing is I'm convinced I'm going to make the most of that. And that's the kind of person I am. That's an ongoing permanent thing. It's not something that you pick up, once every 6 months or once a year to figure these things out. It's an ongoing thing. And as you mentioned, you get older. I'm positive that the things that I thought were important 10 years ago, or when I was 25 years old, or it's just like some of the stuff is like, how stupid. Like I couldn't care less about some of those things just because things change over time and you realize you didn't like them in the first place, or they not what you thought they were going to be, or your just preferences change because you get a little bit older. You don't want to be the guy that's, still living like he's 25 years old when he's 55 years old because he just could never give up and, never change himself and kind of get kind of age gracefully type of thing. So, you have to review those things. What's important to me? What do I really want to be doing? And being honest with yourself and not being kind of stuck with the, kind of sunk cost fallacy, which is like, I've put all this effort into this one particular way of being. I can't give up on it now, which is, kind of doubling down on past decisions when it's just like, be willing to just flush old things down the toilet and just be done with them and just move on. Yeah, you put a lot of effort into it, but it's not wasted effort because you realize you didn't like it, which sometimes is worth more than anything else. I think most of these things are process of elimination. I've realized a lot of things I don't like, and the list is much longer than the things that I do like. And if I can just get rid of those things, all the better. So always reviewing that is the key.
And if you have some sort of like system in place, whether it's a system being the time or some sort of mechanical thing, or it's a conversation with the same person, that will also, I think, help refresh and remind you of the purpose. And then if you do go through some sort of change, in my own personal experience, the change becomes less of an obstacle and more of just this is just inevitable. It's okay. Let's just roll with it. And it's a little bit more settling, having done all the work in degrees 1 through 5 or 1 through 4, as opposed to just out of left, wherever, left field, you lose your job or something. Yeah.
It's like you're better off, sometimes change is going to be forced on you. There's nothing you can really do about it. Like things change and things are unexpected, which happens, but not 100% of the things. Some things change and you could have prepared yourself, because just knowing that things change, being prepared when you're just always on this. I just think sometimes when things start happening that you feel like they're out of control. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times that's because you haven't taken control of the things that you do control. And, there are things that you have control over. And if you exercise some control over the things that you do have control over, when things inevitably don't go your way because you don't have control over them, you have some kind of foundation to work with, to work through those things that are just going to happen unexpectedly. This is the whole, third degree, like being prepared. Things happen. And however, had you prepared for things to happen unexpectedly, because things change, at least you can say, all right, I can handle this. I didn't know this was coming, but I have the tools, I have foundation, I have a little bit of a plan, I know where I'm going, I can change. Right. And the opposite, opportunities present themselves unexpectedly and you're ready to strike. Like, I didn't think this was coming, but here it is. And I'm going to take advantage because this is what I've been hoping I'd be able to do. And you can do it because you've got the time and the resources and you've put all this stuff into place and you can take advantage of it.
Yep. I always think of professional athletes for some reason, maybe just because it's like a visual thing that you can see, whether they're, running marathons or playing soccer or golf or something. But if you think of their dedication to the craft, it's what their passion is. And, these guys and girls they'll end up at a tournament, 4 days of just cutthroat mental, physical battle into a tie, and almost all of them end a match and they go to the driving range, right? Working on, practicing, and even late in careers, they make changes. They alter swings, they change coaches, they go from being, Phil Mickelson's a great one to pick on, super aggressive. Like he was always the one that would par 5, going for 2, tournament on the line and yank it into the water and lose. And then as he's gotten older, he's realized that, okay, there's the risk reward of that is not worth it anymore. So I'm going to play it more smart. And here he is at 50, he just, won a major, which is pretty cool. So that's applicable to us little guys and girls just doing life and managing finances.
Yeah. Yeah. Review is also going through your plan, making sure, but sometimes review is also like, I made a mistake. This didn't go the way that I thought it was going to go. That doesn't make me a horrible person or a dumbass or anything like that. Like I made a mistake, and let me review what I did leading up to this. Where am I to blame? Where are things that were in my control that I could have done differently that would have made this better? And let me be honest with myself so that I can learn lessons from it, and I can use those going forward. If you're just always like ignoring and, not even like reviewing and saying, I don't want to deal with it, or not blaming yourself or not taking yourself, not that kind of stuff. You're just never reviewing. Things are just happening, and you're just,
correct.
That just feels like they're just washing over you, and you're never really taking any lessons beyond that. You're just missing out on opportunities to actually improve over time. So that's a part of review. What worked, what didn't, the things are not going to work all the time. And what can you do and sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes it's just, hey, what can you do? Yeah. And it just is what it is. I just need to know that some things are not going to go in my favor, and that's okay. But here's some other things I probably could change, make it a little bit better for the next time this comes up, good or bad. Opportunity I missed, thing that happened that I didn't necessarily like. So reviewing those things are always helpful. And just a real quick, like tactical thing, if you're wondering, I think a good plan for doing this is if you're by yourself, you can on a weekly basis. I'll just give you what I do. This is what I do. So just on a daily basis,
I was going to cut you off. I was going to ask, so are there any things systematically or tactically that you could do to help improve your kind of quote unquote review category?
Yeah, I do. So on a daily basis, I'm doing my cash flow stuff. I would say that's like 5 minutes. I have a whole system set up. It's really just maintaining that over time. So that's maybe 5 minutes. And even that's probably overselling how much time I'm spending on it. I'm just maintaining it through the week. Then like once a week or twice a week, I'll take a little bit more time to go through it. Like, well, how are things going? Like, am I spending something on money on something I wasn't prepared for? Did something come up that I wasn't planning on? What am I going to be doing in the next month or so I need to be planning for? Am I going on a trip somewhere? Do I want to buy something for the house? All these things, like I need to think these things through and try to come up with some kind of plan, because there's trade-offs. So what trade-offs am I making? And I think, honest to God, maybe that's 10 minutes of just kind of thinking it through. And even that's probably aggressive for how much time. I'm just kind of thinking things through a little bit. And then sometimes, let's say something pops up, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and I need to plan this out a little bit. Then I'll spend a little bit more time. I need to buy a car. Exactly.
Like something like that.
Okay. Exactly. Great example. Let me think this through a little bit. Okay, I need to buy a car. How much do I want to spend? What does that do to my insurance? Then all thinking all of these things through so that I have a general idea of when this happens, how am I going to incorporate that into all this, what I've been working with. And that's, maybe that's 3 times a year, 4 times a year. It's not super frequent, but it's not never either. Right. So those are the kind of times that I'm sitting at.
Sorry, it does require a little bit more thought. And if you're in some sort of relationship, you're married. So I'm assuming like these are conversations that you and Jessica both have together, right?
Absolutely. We probably talk about it. I would say like once a week, we'll talk about stuff like, what do we want to do? And we'll kind of run through things. And again, I wouldn't say that that's super formal. It's probably like, once a week or so, we'll kind of talk through stuff. And then when it's bigger purchases, we're definitely kind of kicking back and forth. What do we want to do? What are the pros and cons? The great thing about it is I'm not just kind of blindly going into something, not knowing how it's going to affect other things that I'm doing. I have a pretty good handle on how this action would affect the other things that I'm doing. And then I just need to say, okay, I'm good with that trade-off. I'm good with that. Right. And a lot of these things I've kind of pre-planned for. But anyways, and then like on a, semi-annual, annual basis, if you have somebody, we've talked about this so many times, a good person to talk to, like, this is what I've been doing. This is where I want to be heading. I'm not exactly sure what I should be doing. I'm a little bit lost. I'm good so far. I'm keeping track of my cash flow. I did this before. I kind of knew where I was going. I have all this third degree set up, this fourth degree. My investments are going. They're somewhat on autopilot for the most part. Am I really headed the right direction? Did I get into some kind of rut where I just started doing actions, and working down a path and never really stopping and, kind of, okay, what's the broader point? Am I really going the right direction? And a lot of times the answer is, yeah, I'm good. Here's a couple things I could tweak. But sometimes it's like, I thought this is more something I wanted to do, but I just, the more that I really think about it, the more that I plan for it or get ready for it, the more that I'm just not comfortable doing it right now, or realize it's not something I want to do or we want to do. And you can change that and say, well, what if we didn't do that? What if we did this instead? And then you can make adjustments going forward. So that's really as far as review. And if you have a friend or professional, you could do that with them too. And, I would say semi-annual, annuals is probably a good pace to do that, especially after you get things set up.
I think that's fantastic. And it also gives you that reminder that whatever you're trying to do is a fluid thing, right? We now say we do financial life planning. It's not a one-time thing. It's not a here you go, send you on your way type of thing. It's not like a root canal. You have a tooth ripped out of there and replaced, and your tooth's good. This is ongoing. So I love the idea that it's some things take a few minutes very often, and other things take a little bit longer, but not as often. But the fact that you're doing that and kind of had a system and process in place, it's now becoming, this is just the way Jack and Jessica operate. This is our life. This is how we do it, and this makes us comfortable.
Yep. And I don't have all the answers, and I'm just as susceptible to anybody else of like, I am emotional about my own position. It's hard for me to look independently and say, it's much easier to ask somebody else and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's the actions that I've been taking. How does that sound? Does it sound like I'm moving the right direction? And having a person that you can ask to say, yeah, I think that's about right. But maybe if you change this thing or change that thing, it would be better. Or I don't know, you're like going the opposite direction. It sounds like maybe you need to really have to make some changes. Otherwise you're going to be, kind of up the river, if you don't start making some changes. So anyways, always going back and reviewing is very important once you get things in place. All that other stuff is super important. There's nothing to review if you don't do those other things. But if you do all those other things, then you can start to review, and it makes it much easier because you'll have something to talk about. It won't be just completely random.
Exactly. And I think that's a great way to conclude this. Just going back to what you said earlier, view the 5 degrees of freedom as a circle. It's just perpetual, and it's going to continue to circle, and you're going to make changes, and you don't have to go in order because some things might force you to go from 3 back to 1, 5 to 3, and just have an open mind. Rely on people around you. If we can be of service, obviously we're here to help as well. But really, you could do this with anybody that you trust that's going to give you honest feedback, and I would say are good listeners so they can really hear what you're trying to do and what you're trying to get out of this thing called life.
Exactly.
So thanks for joining us for another Tuesday Avid Chat. Jack, hope you have a great week.
All right. See you, Dave.